Hello, I'm Tim Shoebridge for Cherry Audio, and that was the sound of Cherry Audio's latest product, the Mercury-6. So what is the Mercury-6? Well, it's Cherry Audio's very detailed and faithful virtual emulation of a classic analog polysynth from back in the 1980s. Yes, we're talking about the Roland Jupiter 6. Now, I've never owned a Jupiter 6, but I've done quite a bit of research for this video, and I think it's fair to say that the Jupiter 6 was not quite the runaway success that Roland were hoping for when they released it early in 1983. I think there's a couple of real sort of like main reasons for that. The first one is just a few months later, Yamaha would unleash upon the synth world their DX7, which, let's face it, would change the face of electronic music forever. But other than that, I do think that people were maybe hoping for a bit more of a powerful and feature-packed successor to the Jupiter 8, which was released before the Jupiter 6. Roland basically pitched the Jupiter 6 as being a cheaper alternative to the Jupiter 8. But there were a number of really important additions to the Jupiter 6. First of all, it was MIDI enabled, and of course we take MIDI for granted these days. But other than that, I think it was one of the first polysynths that had a true split keyboard capability. You could split the periphery between two sections on your keyboard and play two completely different sounds. Again, it's something that we kind of take for granted these days as well. But in terms of sort of the sound that you get from a Jupiter 6, there were some very important changes compared to the Jupiter 8 and the Jupiter before it. We have new improved voltage control oscillators for much better pitch stability, so a much cleaner sound, and also a completely redesigned filter section. It's got a true multi-mode filter for the first time with high pass, low pass and band pass. So let's take a look at the Mercury-6, see what it's about, see how Cherry Audio have faithfully recreated the Jupiter 6, and also see what additions they've added for us to use. Right, so let's take a look at the user interface of Mercury-6, and I hope you agree with me, it's just such a familiar and welcoming user interface. I mean, I really do think we have to hand it to Roland for coming up with such a clear and straightforward and easy to use interface that really has sort of like, you know, stood the test of time across all of their Jupiters and their Junos and other products as well. I think, you know, as well as the Jupiter range here with this interface, you've got the Mini Moog and you've got the Prophet 5. With any of those synthesizers, you can just walk straight up to them and you know what you're doing. You know, you rarely need to look at a user manual. So I'm not going to go through everything here on the front panel. It is very, very familiar. I'm hoping it's familiar to you. But let's just have a brief look through this sort of like main controls section at the top here, and then we'll look at the performance controls afterwards. So top left, we've got the master volume, we've got a limiter. This is pretty standard on Cherry Audio's products. We've got LFO number 1. There is an LFO number 2. It's down here with these performance controls. We'll talk about that a little bit later. VCO mod section, that's where you'd be doing pitch mod, either with LFO or envelope, either to one or both of the oscillators. We've got a pulse width modulation section here. Set the pulse width, and we can also modulate using an LFO or an envelope. Or both, sorry. And then we have our two VCOs, and I really like these little sort of like details and little touches that Cherry Audio provided here. So on the original Jupiter 6, there were these potentiometers for choosing the range, and you can go between all of the semitones as well as the octaves, but there will be these little sticky regions where it will be easy to sort of like select the octaves rather than have to sort of like muck about and try and get the exact position with the dials. And we have that exact same thing here with Cherry Audio's recreation. We've got the little sticky regions. I think these little touches are really cool. We've also got the ability to select multiple waves at the same time, which was a feature on the Jupiter 6. I don't know how well advertised it was. It was almost like a hidden feature, I think, but we've got that capability here. Next we have a mixer section, which is very, very simple. We're just blending between the VCO 1 and 2. If you want noise, then you have to select it here. It's one of the wave shapes for VCO number 2. Next we have our filter section, which is the multi-mode filter. We have low pass, band pass and high pass. We'll come back to that in a second and have a listen to a few examples of the filters. We have got the ability to modulate with envelopes number 1 and number 2, as well as LFO number 2, and also tracking of the keyboard. Then we've got the VCA section, where we can modulate the amplitude. We've got envelope number 2 and we've got LFO number 1 that we can use for that. And then finally over on the right hand side we've got 2 envelope generators. We've got the polarity inversion here with envelope number 1, and something to point out that Cherry Audio have added here for us is velocity sensitivity on both of these envelopes, because the original Jupiter synths, all of those Jupiter synths, did not have velocity sensitive keyboards at all. So with these controls you can really get some expression in your patches that were not possible in the Jupiter 6. But if you want to play, you know, in the style of the Jupiter 6, then you just whack these sliders down to 0, and then you're kind of in compatibility mode. So let's come back to the filter and let's listen to the bandpass filter. So the bandpass filter was new in the Jupiter 6. The Jupiter 4 and 8 didn't have it. And I'm just going to play a few of the factory presets. Now here I've just got a little limited list of favorites that I've just tagged for this video. There are over 500 presets that come with Mercury 6. Let's just choose a few that use the bandpass filter and play those for you. This one's called Epic Rising and it sounds like this. Epic, love it. Let's try a few more. This one's called Deep Space Pad. It sounds like this. It's almost like a choir, isn't it? The one thing you'll find is that the bandpass filter is a lot more gentle and quieter than the high pass and the low pass. The high pass and the low pass are 24 dB. The bandpass filter is 12, and that's pretty standard, isn't it, for multi-mode filters? But it is quieter. It's a lot more gentle, so you get a you've got the capability of coming up with some really quite atmospheric and gentle sounds with it. Let's just try one more. I'm just looking at my little cheat sheet here. Let's go with something a bit different, shall we? Bionic Sweep. It's not quiet and gentle at all. Right, so just having mentioned soft and gentle when it comes to the bandpass filter, let's look at the opposite to that. Let's look at hard and rough. Now there's a few ways of getting really hard and rough sounds out of Mercury 6. First of all, we have got sync options here. We've actually got them both ways, which is really cool. We can sync oscillator 1 to 2 or 2 to 1. But also we have got layers. Now the Jupiter 6, like I mentioned at the beginning, it was one of the first, not the first, but it was one of the early adopters of keyboard split technology. So you could have two completely different sounds and play one in the upper range of the keyboard and the other in the lower range of the keyboard. What Cherry Audio have done is they've basically taken that capability and extended it. So not only can you have splits, but you can actually put your two different sounds over the top of each other, have two completely different sounds on top. And layering is something that Cherry Audio do in a lot of their products, and it is really, really cool. It really does extend the sonic capabilities of the synth. It basically gives you two synthesizers in one, let's face it. So if we look at the controls around sort of like key mode, WHL means whole of keyboard, and split is obviously split, and we can set the split point here. But with Mercury-6, we have a layer option as well. Now with split or layer, we can access the two completely different sounds with these buttons here, lower and upper. So at the moment we're looking at the upper sound capabilities, and then we switch to lower, and as you can see, what Cherry Audio are doing here is changing all the color of the LEDs, so it's very clear which layer we're editing at any point in time. Also, you can see that this layer section here, it's blue when it's the lower, and when I select the upper, it turns to orange. So that's really cool to see what's going on. So we've got all of these controls per layer. Now, in terms of the splits on the original Jupiter 6, we had only 6 voices of polyphony, and that was a hard limit. So as soon as you start to use a split, you really are limited in terms of polyphony. You're either going to have 4 notes of polyphony in the upper section of your keyboard and 2 in the lower, or vice versa, 4 in the lower and 2 in the upper. Now, obviously, Mercury-6, it's a software synthesizer. We don't have any hard limits. And so what Cherry Audio have given us is a lot of capabilities in terms of polyphony. This particular preset that I'm looking at here has got 8 voices set as maximum for the lower layer and 8 for the upper. So that's actually 16 in total. But as you can see here, you could go all the way up to 16 voices per layer. So 32 voices of polyphony in total if you want to. And if you want to play Mercury-6 like a Jupiter 6, then absolutely you can. Don't use layers, just go with split keyboard, and then really limit yourself with 4 and 2 voices of polyphony on each of those sides of the keyboard. That will be your Jupiter 6 sort of compatibility mode, if you like. So let's listen to what this sounds like. We've got some oscillator sync going on, and we've got layers, and we have a unison mode here. So unison is where it's stacking up those 8 voices per note that I play, and it sounds like this. Pretty massive, isn't it? Let's try that with a bit of glide, see what that sounds like. Right, so let's get back to layers, because there's a lot to cover with layers. They are a really powerful feature in Mercury-6. But before we do that, let's just cover very quickly one other feature here in the performance section, which is the arpeggio section. Now, this is a sort of like a recreation, a very detailed and faithful recreation of the arpeggio capability of the Jupiter 6. We've got a rate control here for setting the speed of the arpeggios. You'll also see we've got a sync button next to it, and that sync button is so that we can synchronize to clock the speed of the arpeggiator. We've also got this same sync button in other places. Here you can see it for LFO number 1. Down here you can see it for LFO number 2. And where we have time-based effects like delay, you'll see we've got sync for that as well. So everywhere we really need sync against MIDI clock, we've got it here with Mercury-6. So in terms of the arpeggio section again, so we've got the rate, we've got a range, which is the number of octaves up and down that the arpeggio will play through, and then we've got some buttons for choosing the direction. So we have the normal stuff. We've got up and we've got down, and we've got up and down. Now, really interestingly here with the Mercury-6 and the Jupiter 6, we had the choice of going up then down or down then up. And we do that here with Mercury-6 because you'll see here we've got this little flashing button. So if we tap up down again, it moves to this one. So this one here is up then down, and this one here is down then up. So that's how we differentiate between those. We've also got a random button here. I don't think this was on the Jupiter 6. I'm not 100% sure. I think Cherry Audio might have added it. I'm not sure, but I think so. So we've got those options. Now, why am I mentioning arpeggios in the same breath as the layers? Well, with the layers on Mercury-6, we get an arpeggio section per layer, which is really cool because we can have kind of offsetting rhythms going on at different time signatures with the arpeggios in either of the layers for some really interesting effects. And we can also do some other stuff with our layers. If you look at the layer section over here, as well as being able to set the volume of each of the layers give us stereo capability, so we can actually pan the layers either subtly or unsubtly left and right in the stereo field. I've got a factory preset here called Transformers, and you'll see that the upper layer is panned hard left and the lower layer is panned hard right, so we're going to get a real big stereo effect with this particular preset, and it's a preset that's going to be playing an arpeggio on both of the layers separately, and it sounds like this. Really nice, I like that. I just clicked on that hold button because I noticed that one of the arpeggios was in hold mode, so that's why you were getting those sort of like a sort of held notes, sort of really giving an interesting rhythm to one of the layers. So the hold capability allows you, with the arpeggio on or off, doesn't matter, it allows you to sort of like play some notes and then have them sustained the whole time. It's good for creating patches and fiddling around with the front controls, and it's great with arpeggios as well. So one way that we can hear what's going on with a layered patch is to solo one of those layers, and we do that with this layer solo button here. So at the moment we've got the lower layer selected. Let's just solo it and hear what it sounds like, and you'll hear it's coming on the right channel only, and if we solo the upper layer you can hear it's over on the other channel, which is why we got that big stereo effect. Let's just have a listen to another patch that's got a big stereo effect. Let me see what we've got here. This one here, Sunshine Spray Panning. So again, this is a layered patch. You can see that here, and upper layer is panned hard right and lower layer is panned hard left, and it sounds like this. There's just a few more performance controls I want to cover in this video. Let's just have a look at these ones here down by the keyboard on the left hand side. They're basically in two parts. We've got a bend section and an LFO2 section. Now the bend section is relating to this control here, a bend wheel. Not a pitch bend wheel, because it does more than pitch bend. We can bend the pitch of both or either of the oscillators. We can use that control to control the filter cutoff as well as the amplitude, and we can do those all at the same time because we've got these sliders that control that. So we can either drag this bend wheel around on the screen with our mouse, or we can use the pitch bend wheel of your MIDI controller keyboard and control it that way. So it's really cool that we've got control over the pitch bend of the oscillators on their own. This particular patch that I've got going on here has got a lot of hard sync. So what I'm going to do is just use the bend controller to bend the pitch of VCO number 1, and we'll hear hopefully some nice hard sync kind of effects. It sounds like this. Like that. Now this right hand section, this LFO2 section, it's a performance LFO. We don't have a mod wheel, but we do have a button on the Jupiter 6. It's this trigger button, and obviously you can click it on and off. And we can use LFO number 2 when we engage it to give us some modulation of pitch and of the filter cutoff with these controls here. We've got control over the rate of the LFO, which we can sync to MIDI clock, and this rise control here is basically giving a sort of delayed onset of the effect of the LFO. So it's a performance LFO, it's a global LFO, and we can just use this button to engage it. But what Cherry Audio have done with Mercury-6 is allow us to control it with the mod wheel. It's an on-off, but you can turn it on and off with the mod wheel like that. And as well as it being something that you can control with the mod wheel, and with this button here, they've given us control over it to have it permanently on. So basically just have it as a second global LFO that we can use at any point in time to modulate what we want. Like that. Lastly, what I want to cover in this video is a look at the effects section. So it's quite common with Cherry Audio synths to provide a set of effects to play around with. I think it's a really great idea because it kind of makes Mercury-6 an all-in-one sort of like go-to solution for synth sounds. And there are some really, really good effects here in Mercury-6. We've got the sort of the usual reverb and delay. We've also got a flanger or chorus selectable with a bunch of different controls over the sort of the sound, and we've got a very comprehensive phaser section here. We've got multiple stages to it. We've got a rate which we can either use an internal LFO to control, or you can use LFOs 1 or 2 to control the rate of the phaser, and you've got depth and feedback as you'd expect. And finally, we've got a distortion effect as well. Let me just grab a different factory preset that we can use. She's breaking up is the one I'm looking for. There it is. This is using the distortion effect. It sounds like this. Gritty, nice. Now these effects, they can be true kind of global effects, the same effects that you would apply to both of your layers at the same time, or you can have a complete separate effect section per layer for a huge amount of flexibility in terms of the sounds that you can create. That's a lot of fun. It covers an awful lot of ground, this synthesizer, in terms of the sounds that you can get out of it. You really can. I mean, if you don't mind me just giving my own opinion at this point in the video, I know I'm not meant to really give an opinion in this video, I'm just kind of just showing you the synth, but if I can give you my opinion, you know, with all the research I've done and everything that I've read, people's opinions about the original Jupiter 6, there's one phrase that I've read over and over and over again, and that is workhorse. You know, the Jupiter 6 might not be the most exotic synthesizer, it might not be the most powerful synthesizer, but it gets the job done and it covers a wide variety of sounds. It's a workhorse, and I think that's a really good expression to apply to Mercury-6 as well. You know, there's thousands of soft synths available out there, some very weird and wonderful ones, some very powerful ones, but if you want to cover a wide sonic variety and you want to just get the job done, then the Mercury-6 might just be the synth for you, because for me, you know, that interface, it's just so clear, so straightforward, it's so quick to get in there and dial in some sounds and get the job done. It really is a workhorse.